And welcome everybody to the M2 podcast. I'm your host, Mad Mike. This is episode 13. This is the show where we cover your esports and personalities, some gaming industry related news, and upcoming games and technology. This week's episode, we're going to be covering a little bit about Facebook's new program for African American streamers to help them go full time, Cyberpunk 2077, benchmarks for the PC, and performance analysis. Also, whether or not Xbox Series X or PS5 should be your console of choice if you want to play Cyberpunk 2077. The winners of the 2020 Game Awards last week. Several big announcements were at that Game Award as well, and we will be covering those. And also just in general, new games that are going to be coming to the Xbox Game Pass for the month of December. Before we get into those news, I'd love to talk about an article that I came across about a week ago. After the last episode. The title of the article is "Esports Gamers Are Healthier Than the General Population. Experts Say They Are Nearly 8% More Likely to Avoid Daily Drinking." I found this kind of surprising, but at the same time, not really that surprising. Most young people are gamers, especially esports gamers, and most young people are generally more healthy than the general population. But in this article, they go on to say that according to a new survey on studyfinds.org, esports gamers are 9 to 21% more likely to have a healthy body weight than other people. The study also showed gamers are much less likely to drink alcohol or smoke. Experts say they're almost 8% more likely to avoid drinking on a daily basis. Meanwhile, only 3.7% of esports players smoke daily. That's far less compared to the global smoking average of 18.7%. And the study also revealed that esports gamers are much more physically active on a regular basis as well. And they say, experts say the best players exercise 4 days a week on average. So according to the study, your physical fitness may influence your video game capabilities. There is a little bit of a caveat in this article. It says, however, the study found just over 4% of video gamers are more likely to be morbidly obese than the rest of the population. Regardless, the researchers say they want to figure out a way to make sure high school and college esports players are getting enough physical activity. So our first topic in news is that Facebook recently announced a program to aid Black creators in their pursuit of full-time streaming careers. The Black Gaming Creator Program will dedicate $10 million over the next 2 years to Black creators. It will give select applicants partner status, mentorship for, in quotes, established creators, early access to new features, monetization options, and guaranteed monthly pay. While Facebook is not discussing specifics, it did tell The Verge that the pay will vary based on the quality of the streamers, content, and the scale of their audience. In a short video, Twitch turned Facebook streamer King Richard elaborated on the program's goals. And he said, "This program is designed to help people make the transition into full-time streaming, which is something that's extremely hard." And in a statement sent to Kotaku by Facebook, he added that he personally managed to become a full-time streamer with the support of my family and my community, but that having a huge company like Facebook supporting us is going to open the doors for future success. Now, this program comes on the heels of Facebook's $200 million commitment to supporting Black-owned organizations over the summer, a time period marked by the protests in the wake of George Floyd's murder at the hands of police. At that time, many Twitch streamers who previously stayed quiet about subjects that could be construed as political spoke out in support of their Black colleagues. And some perennially unappreciated Black streamers finally received long overdue attention. However, the streaming landscape remains overwhelmingly white, with the 2018 data showing that 71.5% of streamers and viewers on Twitch, far and away the biggest streaming platform out there, identify as white. And while Twitch publicly partnered 2 Black streamers during last month's streamed GlitchCon event that did basically little to offset years of racist emote issues that they've had, which once again reared their ugly heads during the aforementioned GlitchCon partnership segment. In addition, one of the newly partnered black streamers, Zomba Kills, went on to become the victim of a targeted harassment campaign not long after, something Twitch has not spoken out against or acknowledged. Now, Zomba Killer told Kotaku in a DM, in an official capacity, no, Twitch has done nothing. A staffer, head of diversity and inclusion, just told me to up my mod settings and expressed they were sad it was happening to me. But Facebook's program, nonetheless, is guaranteed material benefits, which will not solve racism or catapult black streamers into the spotlight, but it will at least give a few possible footholds for which they can basically climb up. You know, I gotta say, with Facebook Gaming making a program like this and trying to get like new creators involved on the platform and giving them proper support, I think this is a really, really good opportunity for a lot of people that want to pick up streaming. And if you're just starting out, I think it's really wise to start out on Facebook and YouTube more so than Twitch, only because Twitch has horrible discoverability. But with Facebook, especially with this program, and if you fall into the category that can like benefit from the program, where you have already established content and at least some type of recognition on the platform, you might succeed. Like, this is a really good opportunity. I like this idea. Moving on to Cyberpunk 2077. This is something that I've desperately wanted to talk about. I have the game downloaded, it's in my Steam. I'm still waiting for more updates because apparently there's a lot of bugs in this game that I've heard reports of, at least on Twitter and social media and all this other stuff. But there was a report or an article on tomsguide.com, and they sourced Video Game Chronicle. And basically what the article was about was the differences between the Xbox Series X and the PS5. So it turns out that the Xbox Series X has an advantage over the PS5. The Video Game Chronicle covered one key difference between the PlayStation and Xbox versions of the game when you're playing on the next-gen console. The PS5 has a performance mode in the settings, and when activated, the resolution takes a minor hit to give the console what it needs to try and hit those 60 frames per second. The Xbox Series X has this too, but it has an extra quality mode that does the exact opposite. If you're willing to play at 30 frames per second, you can boost the resolution to the uppermost limit. A lot of people would argue that frame rate is more important than resolution, and they make an excellent point. But not everyone's the same, and at least the Xbox Series X gives you the option of choosing between prioritizing resolution or trying to hit that sweet 60 frames per second cap. Now, as for the PC version, it seems like its performance is better than the console versions, and according to Tom's Hardware, you'll need the latest NVIDIA RTX 3090 GPU if you want a chance of hitting 4K 60 frames per second. And even downgrading to 1440p 60 frames per second is going to need something akin to an RTX 3080. With that said, it seems like you can get one or the other with slightly less advanced hardware. Now, there is one thing you need to note, is that right now, the current version of Cyberpunk 2077 is the last gen game, playing on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, via the backwards compatibility. A next gen upgrade isn't due until sometime next year, which means it hasn't been optimized for the more advanced hardware and can't take full advantage of what's to offer. Now, really the only question is whether it will be enough to hit the coveted 4K 60 frames per second level, or something even 120 frames per second at lower resolutions. But we won't know for sure until someone at CD Projekt Red gives us more information. Sticking with Tom's Hardware, their website and magazine, they have an article that is about 6,500 words. It's a mammoth of an article. One can even say like a research paper. Now, what it's called is Cyberpunk 2077 PC Benchmarks, Settings, and Performance Analysis. And it's by Jared Walton. Now, what happened is that they went ahead and tested Cyberpunk 2077 on a ton of GPUs to see how it would run. And apparently they've come to the conclusion that the game is very, very demanding for PC players. I am going to summarize some of this up, but the reason why I gave the full article name and who it's by and how it's on Tom's hardware is if you have a PC and you plan on gaming Cyberpunk 2077 on your PC, I highly recommend you check this article out. So a couple of the things that they go through is they have tons and tons of charts. I just want to hit some of the small ones. So for general people here that have graphics cards and they just want to have like a general understanding of what kind of frames per second you're going to be getting, 1280 by 720 at low settings. If you have something like a GTX 1650 Super, you should get up to 105 frames per second. Now, if you have a Vega 11, you're going to only get like 32 frames per second. They also have about a mid-tier in between those two cards. The GTX 970, you will come just shy of 60 frames per second. Now, this is at 720p low resolution or low settings. Moving up to 1920 by 1080 at medium settings, they have tons of cards here listed. I'm sure most people, they're in the GTX 1060 range. If you have the basic GTX 1060 3 gigabytes, you're only going to have about 30 frames per second at 1080p medium settings. If you have something like the 2060 Super, you're going to get about 87.5 or 87 frames per second, 1080p medium settings. If you have something like the RTX 6800, you should break well over 100, maybe get to 110 frames per second. Moving on to 1920 by 1080p at ultra settings. At the top of this chart, they have the RTX 3080, which is the newest graphics card that came out by NVIDIA. At ultra settings at 1080p, you should get around 105 frames per second. And if you have something like the GTX 1070, you're only going to get about 34 frames per second at 1080p ultra settings. Now, obviously, this game is incredibly demanding, as they went ahead and said, but I think it might have something to do possibly with optimization of the game. Obviously, there's a lot of there's a lot of demand in it by nature of the game engine and everything that they set up for this monster of a game. But I think as the game continues on, they can release, what do you call them? I think health updates to the game to make it run smoother with the new equipment. Obviously, NVIDIA is going to see these games. Even AMD, apparently, a couple of days ago, released an update to their CPUs to boost frames per second on this game. Your frames per second isn't just your graphics card. It also has to do with your CPU. Looking at this report, it's going to be rough on most CPUs, but overall, it seems to be a good game. And the frames per second really isn't that bad. I mean, sure, if you're used to doing 200 frames per second on high settings in like CSGO, this is going to be rough for you. But this is more of like a first-person role-playing game, exploration game. It's not FPS, like driven gameplay. For some of you whales out there that have top of the line equipment, especially the RTX 3090, that came out, the Cyberpunk 2077 ray tracing settings for 3840 by 2160, aka 4K, at ultra settings with DLSS performance, you're not even going to be able to hit 60 frames per second. Possible updates might get you up there. But according to Tom's Hardware, they were only able to get about 55 frames per second. On the lower end of the RTX series, with RTX 2060s, they were getting 14 frames per second at the same settings. Now, fortunately for me, I have an RTX 2070 Super, which now I feel like I need to upgrade. because I will only get 25 frames per second if I do 4K Ultra with DLSS. Now, enough with the numbers from this article. I do want to give off a couple of take-home notes that the PC gamers are going to want to hear. So, first thing that they mention is that one of the key takeaways is that Cyberpunk 2077 really prefers the later generation hardware, particularly if you're hoping for 60 frames per second or more. AMD's GPUs also win on many head-to-head matchups against the closest NVIDIA competitors with ray tracing and DLSS disabled. Still, NVIDIA's RTX GPUs do quite well at running the game with or without ray tracing. If you're willing to step down from maximum settings, any RTX card will at least average 60 frames per second. The newer RTX 30 series GPUs tend to have sufficient power under the hood for RT Ultra settings and provide the best visual experience, but cards like the 2060 Super still do fine, and AMD's RX 5600 XT and above won't have any trouble delivering a good gaming performance or experience. One thing that's worth mentioning about Cyberpunk 2077 is that the game is an M-rated game, so if you have problems with language, violence, and sex in video games that offend you, you're best just to stay away from this. There is a nudity filter, but there is no profanity filter, and violence is everywhere. It's very much equivalent to an R-rated film. So if that matters to you, this probably isn't the game for you. However, it's definitely going to be the game that's going to be talked about for at least the next year. The last thing I want to talk about with Cyberpunk 2077 is that a lot of people that have the original Xbox Ones and the PS4s of this game are complaining about tons and tons of bugs and how the game just looks awful. I heard that PS5 players are also having this issue. I think they need to understand that the game, from the perspective of like the consumer, you need to understand like this game was delayed. It wasn't originally ready to come out. So they must have been under immense pressure to finish it. We just learned that the game that's being played on the Xbox Series X and the one on the PS5 is the older version, not the older version, the last gen version of the game on the console. Now, I've seen this game being played on PC with like RTX 3090s and like the highest end Intel CPU you could possibly see, and like 30 or 64 gigabytes of RAM on computers that are just beefy. And when you look at that footage of 4K, 60 frames per second, I mean, it's phenomenal. It looks gorgeous. Now, I can't say anything about the story or how the game's actually playing out for people, but it looks amazing. Now, you're always going to have bugs. I mean, when a new game comes out, you're always going to have bugs. Just give it some time. I've also heard that there's been plenty of refunds happening where people are just truly upset about their experiences. But in the long run, this game should be good. And normally I'm not a proponent for launching a game that's broken and then updating it later. But this seems like the case of we launched the last gen console version for the new gen console version, but the PS version's completely finished. You know what I mean? Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for this as it goes on. I will certainly be playing this game, and I'm going to have a series on YouTube of my playthrough. So if you're interested in that, the links should be in the description. Alright, moving on to the 2020 Game Awards. Now, before we get into who the winners were and who was nominated for what and all these other things, I want to talk about the big announcements that were made. So first and foremost, Microsoft revealed a new Perfect Dark game. It's from a new Santa Monica-based studio called The Initiative, and rather than the series originator Rare, it takes place in a world shaped by ecological disaster. Corporations provided solutions and a better world. Not very realistic, to be honest, but that doesn't look like it's going to turn out so well in the end. and Microsoft plans to share more information in the future. The trailers are all on YouTube if you want to go check them out, but the Perfect Dark series returning, I'm very excited about this. I used to play N64 Perfect Dark all the time. I literally have it in my other room, in my living room. Such a fun game. Also, if you're a big fan of Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth is coming to Smash. And in his first act during the trailer for his reveal, was he ended up murdering Mario. So if you don't know, Sephiroth is a fictional character and the main antagonist of Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII being probably or arguably one of the most successful Final Fantasy games. Also, in another announcement, the Master Chief is coming to Fortnite. Halo is actually coming to Fortnite before it comes to Xbox Series X. Now, obviously, this was supposed to align in the release, the original release date of Halo Infinite, along with like the Monster Energy drinks and all these other like candies and all this like XP stuff. But what I found most interesting about the reveal trailer is that they had Ninja's character, a guy whose original fame came from playing Halo professionally, is dressed up on Blood Gulch, which is the creative map that's in Fortnite, with Rooster Teeth, of red versus blue, and they're arguing about Fortnite and Halo. So I felt that was a huge full circle for Ninja. I thought it was pretty cool for him. I'm not a huge fan of Fortnite, but you can't argue against its success. There were more announcements. BioWare showed a brief Dragon Age 4 cinematic. It was pretty short, but they showed it. Mass Effect is going to continue as well. They released a sneak peek for the next trailer or teaser chapter of Mass Effect. Also, Dead Space creator is making a new sci-fi horror game. It's called The Callisto Protocol, and it's apparently set in a PUBG universe somehow. Ark Survival Evolved is getting a sequel, and it's starring Vin Diesel, of all people. And in the trailer, it was actually pretty cool. It was obvious they used some type of facial camera and like graphing software to depict his face to put it in the game. And in the trailer, it looks really good. The studio behind Gone Home and Tacoma announced a new game. The game is called Open Roads, and it's about a mom and a daughter searching for the truth about the latter's deceased grandmother, whose past apparently included a mysterious man who wasn't the grandfather, a burglar ring, and a lost fortune. And it looks like it's going to be a road trip game. That one seemed pretty interesting. Another game that was teased that I am very excited for is that the original Left 4 Dead studio, Turtle Rock, showed off its new zombie game, Back 4 Blood, and in the trailer, they also showed gameplay as well. It basically looks like Left 4 Dead 3. And if you've never played Left 4 Dead 1 or 2, highly recommend you check it out. It's basically a 4-player co-op game where you have to survive hordes and hordes of zombies, and there is a possibility to win at the end. Now, you can do 4v4, where 4 people can be mutilated zombies on the other side of the enemies trying to kill and attack the humans. Highly recommend you check it out. It's a very interesting game, and I've missed it ever since the servers went offline and nobody plays it anymore. There are also a couple of updates coming to Among Us. They're going to be getting a new game on an airship. The team at Fall Guys is going to be starting 3rd season, and it's going to be coming December 15th. And the last 2 things that I want to talk about is Elder Scrolls Online is headed to Oblivion. So the game's 2021 Gates of Oblivion update is headed back to the setting of the Elder Scrolls 4, or at least the Hell part of it. And also there is going to be a collaboration with the weapons from Epic's Unreal Tournament series going to Warframe, which is a free-to-play looter-shooter style game that is, I believe, on every single console and device you can think of. It's a pretty fun game if you have friends and you want to try something out for free. Alright, now on to the 2020 Game Awards winners. So first and foremost, our Game of the Year for 2020 was Last of Us Part 2 by Naughty Dog. Best game direction was also Last of Us Part 2 by Naughty Dog. The most anticipated game of the year was Elden Ring by software Bandai Namco. And also, the best narrative game was The Last of Us Part 2. There were a couple other ones that are worth mentioning, like art direction, Ghost of Tsushima, which I thought personally must have came in second place for Game of the Year. Score and music. The one who took the cake was the actual Final Fantasy remake that came out in 2020. Best audio design was The Last of Us Part 2. I want to go ahead and talk about some of the award winners that I found surprising. The first one being Best Ongoing Game. There were 5 nominees for pretty much almost every single one of these categories. Now, for the ongoing game, they had No Man's Sky, Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Call of Duty Warzone, and Fortnite. I thought for sure that Fortnite would win this because of basically they're ridiculous. They're doing all these events and having hundreds of thousands of people just watching streams, let alone how many people are actually playing it. But what I found amazing is that No Man's Sky won. Now keep in mind, this is an amazing comeback story. No Man's Sky, when it launched, was a debacle. It was arguably false advertising from the creators and director and the owner of the company. But to go from where they were when they first launched to being a broken game that didn't fulfill any expectations to now it actually has everything that they promised, I think they deserve that. They've been working their butt off. The other categories I wanted to mention is for Best Sports and Racing Game. The nominees were Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, which is the remakes, Dirt 5, F1 2020, FIFA 21, and NBA 2K21. It turns out that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake won. I find that troubling because I don't think remakes should be allowed or be eligible for awards for a certain year because it's a remake after all. Now there were other remakes that did win in other categories, but this category in particular I find distressing because there really aren't very many good sports or racing games that have come out in the last couple of years. I can't personally think of any. It's just constantly rehashing Madden or NBA or NCAA type games. We need a good racing game to come out. We need Forza Horizon 5 or Forza Motorsport like 19 or whichever one they're on now. The other category that I want to move on to is Best Multiplayer Game. They nominated Among Us, Animal Crossings, New Horizons, and Call of Duty Warzone, Fall Guys, and Valorant. I am really surprised Among Us won this because Among Us came out in 2018, whereas Fall Guys came out last year, and Fall Guys had Tim the Tatman like crazy hyped up. I mean, there were at one point there was like 500,000 people watching him trying to get his first ever win, and everybody and their mother was wanting to play this game. Personally, I think Fall Guys should have won, but I mean, what's an award show without a little bit of controversy, you know? Now, the last award I want to talk about is the Content Creator of the Year. Now, Valkyrae ended up winning this award. The other nominees were Alana Pierce, Jay Ann Lopez, Nick Merckx, and Tim the Tatman. I personally felt it was definitely a toss-up between Valkyrae and Tim the Tatman. Tim the Tatman's been putting in a lot of work. I've seen multiple YouTube channels out of him that have been crazy successful. He's going hard on TikTok, he's going hard on Instagram and Twitter, and he's just overall crushing it on Twitch. But you got to give it up for Valkyrae for being the #1 female streamer on the planet. And she went from basically 0 to 100 in a matter of a handful of months. So, got to give it up to her. Rightfully deserved. But, yeah. So anyways, that was the 2020 Video Game Awards. I have a full list of the winners in my Discord. The link will be in the description. You can come check it out. Or you can go look it up for yourself. it's readily available. Now, the last bit of news I got for you is games that are coming to the Xbox Game Pass in December. So there are definitely about like 10 of these games, but I think the ones that I personally find interesting are that The Elder Scrolls V, the Skyrim Special Edition, is coming for Android and console on December 15th. Among Us for PC is coming December 17th. The Dark Pictures Anthology, or Man of Medan, is coming December 17th. Also, MotoGP 20. Like I said, we need a good racing game. I'm going to be checking that out. Personally, I haven't seen it. But it's coming out on Android, console, and PC. Neoverse is also coming out on Android and console. And Wilmot's Warehouse, which is coming out on console and PC. Both of those two games are coming out December 17th. Alright, and that is the conclusion of episode 13 of the M2 podcast. I appreciate everybody listening. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I'm on all social medias. My handle is at MadMikeLeachu, all one word. The U at the end is the letter U, MadMikeLeachu. And also, I stream Tuesdays and Thursdays on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So feel free, stop in, say what's up, see how it's going. Most recently, I've been playing Doom Eternal, and it is the most ridiculous game I've ever played. Absolutely enjoying it. So, hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you shortly. Thank you.